This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. That is bullshit.
I felt that sort of tinderbox feeling in Chicago, I felt it in New Orleans, and it's very evident to me that that's what's going on in Minneapolis. I've obviously been extremely vocal in opposing ISIS presence in the city in the first place.
I have a message for ICE. Get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
The US is on edge after the shooting of a mother of three by immigration agents in Minneapolis. Well, joining me to talk about this is Oliver Laughland. Thanks so much for coming into the studio, Ollie. So this is really, really shocking and harrowing footage that dropped yesterday, didn't it? It's a woman driving an SUV in the city of Minneapolis who is shot by ICE agents. Talk me through exactly what we see in this footage.
Yeah, so it's another one of these videos that come out sporadically in America depicting an officer-involved killing. Renee Good is a resident of the city. It happens very quickly, as it often does, and we see her in a parked SUV. She is shouted at by some ICE agents, given commands to let them into the vehicle or move. She reverses the vehicle and then drives forward. There are 3 agents surrounding the vehicle. One of them opens fire, fires 3 shots, and she's shot and killed.
And there are eyewitnesses, aren't there? There is someone who films every second of this and is crying out in kind of despair and shock at what's happened. The victim, as you say, a 37-year-old mother of 3. Her name is Renee Nicole Good. She's a US citizen who'd recently moved, tragically, to the city with her kids. But there are very different versions, according to which side you're talking to, about what happened, right?
Sure. So, you know, it's not uncommon in the immediate aftermath of an officer-involved shooting to hear kind of conflicting accounts about what occurs. And in rare instances where you have the video, you're able to test the claims that are being made by authorities. And so what the Trump administration has claimed, and this is the Department of Homeland Security that are responsible for ICE, basically labelled her a domestic terrorist and said that she was attempting to ram the officers and drive away. I think when you look at that video, it seems to me that somebody is just trying to move their car and, you know, is being shouted at. There may have been some confusion. I think the label of domestic terrorism is just quite extraordinary. And as I say, it's very common in these situations to get conflicting accounts. What is not that common is to hear the sort of rhetoric and hyperbole that we're kind of used to now with the Trump administration.
Yeah, and the Trump line being that this is an act of self-defense, but that has been roundly and wholeheartedly dismissed by local authorities in the city of Minneapolis, right? Talk me through that, because the language there is equally strong, right? Minneapolis
is a Democratic stronghold in the Democratic state. You know, you have the mayor there who's been in office for many, many years, was in office when the last time Minneapolis went through a spate of protracted unrest in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. We have the same state attorney general, Keith Ellison, the same governor, Tim Walz. The contrast in which, they've spoken about this kind of speak volumes. This is a progressive city that has kind of different values around law enforcement, how law enforcement should be trained. I've obviously been extremely vocal in opposing ISIS presence in the city in the first place. And that is just, you know, the kind of contrast that we're living through in America at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's Minneapolis' mayor saying, commanding that ICE leave the city and calling this self-defense claim bullshit. So this has all happened in the wake of a really unusually large presence of ICE officers in the city of Minneapolis that started on Tuesday, right? And as you say, there'd been this big community mobilization in response to that. But tell me about why there was that many ICE agents on the streets of Minneapolis this week.
It's part of a pattern, right? So the Trump administration is deploying ICE in various Democratic cities all around the country. The ostensible reason in Minneapolis is because they are going after the sizable Somali American community that live in Minneapolis. It's one of the largest Somali American populations in the country. It's the congressional district of Ilhan Omar. But, you know, for a lot of people, these raids serve a kind of political purpose as well. There's a lot of optics that goes into this. I live in New Orleans. I've had immigration presence in my city, and I've seen, you know, Border Patrol agents walking down the French Quarter, you know, basically looking for photo opportunities. But what often happens, and what's happened in this instance, is just the convergence of, you know, the rhetoric and the imagery of it with real actual harm. So seeing people snapped off the streets all over the country, and in this instance, you know, leading to fatal violence.
Yeah. And this shooting happened just under a mile from where George Floyd was murdered in 2020, the aftermath of which you covered very extensively. But I mean, this footage has the potential to be a real tinderbox moment, doesn't it? In perhaps a similar way, you've got an administration that's saying that it's not going to be withdrawing or reducing the ICE operation. You then have a community that is shocked and in horror at what's occurring. I mean, we're in the very raw first few hours after this, but it's unlikely to settle down this week, is it?
Absolutely not. And I think, I've been covering some of these ICE raids, as I said, in other cities. And what was very apparent to me, and this was in Chicago, was just the kind of, disproportionate response that ICE officers in particular, have, sporadically used against peaceful protesters around the country. I was on the front lines in an immigration detention centre in Chicago, got tear gassed with a bunch of peaceful protesters, and I immediately thought to myself, this is a lack of training, and there's been a huge push to hire more and more ICE agents. It's going to become the largest federal law enforcement agency in the country at some point. Billions and billions of dollars going into equipping officers all around the country. And I felt that sort of tinderbox feeling in Chicago. I felt it in New Orleans, and it's very evident to me that that's what's going on in Minneapolis. This is a city that obviously has a history of protracted unrest in the aftermath of George Floyd. And really, these officer-involved shootings can often be the kind of sharp end of policy issues, intersectional policy issues around the country. With George Floyd, it was about racism and policing. Obviously here it's about immigration enforcement as well. And I think, it's very hard to predict exactly how it will unfold, but obviously this is not going to be going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and vigils and demonstrations, not just in Minneapolis, but elsewhere in America. I mean, you mentioned that there have been agents sent to other big cities like Chicago, like New York, like Los Angeles. So we could see this start to spread up across the country.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what I have seen, in the cities that I've been to is actually probably a degree of unexpected restraint from a lot of protesters. Yes, right. I've seen direct action. I've seen people kind of turn up and try to block cars.
With an awareness of these risks.
Exactly, yeah. And I think people are kind of cognizant of, the new sort of powers that Trump has endowed on federal law enforcement, the sheer size of it as well, and the disproportionate response. Whether Trump's rhetoric and whether the actions of DHS are going to do anything to help that is another question, and I would suspect probably not.
So we are expecting more protests to be happening across America. We're speaking kind of early doors as America is waking up, but those demonstrations are definitely expected to happen later today. There'll be vigils for Renee Nicole Good, but also obviously there will be investigations into what's happened, and those are happening in these very extraordinary, even more polarised kind of set of claim and counterclaim of the facts of what's happened. So just talk me through what we can expect to happen next, Ollie.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously happened, very recently. The investigation, will continue. I mean, what you saw, George Floyd is such a pertinent example of this. When that footage came out and we saw exactly what transpired after a pretty lackluster law enforcement statement initially, there were demands from protesters to, indict the officers responsible. And that happened pretty quickly in Minneapolis. Obviously, in that instance, it was municipal police, so it was local police with a local district attorney and, state attorney general being the main investigators. This time the FBI are involved. The FBI is obviously a federal agency, which is, under the jurisdiction of the Trump administration. So I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how that investigation unfolds, what the political dynamics are, and whether this results in a charge. It's already very, very rare for officers to be charged in, fatal encounters with civilians in America already. In a situation like this that is so polarized, it's going to be even harder to predict.
Yeah. Well, Ollie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much.